So when discussing horizontal and vertical planning or
Mhm.
curriculum, we think of it as horizontal is across the horizon, across the board. And so like on a campus, if I was a seventh grade teacher, horizontal planning would include other ELAR seventh grade teachers. It could
Okay.
even include, if I wanted to do horizontal planning cross-curricular, it could include other seventh grade teachers that possibly were history or
Okay.
possibly were science. When we talk about vertical planning, we are talking about up the graphing line vertical. And so that's many times, and we did it like vertical planning all the way through the district, where junior high teachers got to plan with high school teachers. So like, and the reason that it's beneficial is because we want for us to be talking and checking for needs, right? Always doing checking
Uh-huh.
for needs. And so who better to say than the grade below or the grade above on like what needs to come, like what exactly are we missing when they get to me. This is an area of problem as far as the curriculum is concerned. So then we bulk up on that particular deficiency, based on the need. So vertical
Okay.
planning is when different grade levels within the same content area do
Uh-huh.
planning. They do that planning using data, using their students' particular needs, trends that they've witnessed in the classroom, and then they plan to circumvent issues to try to bolster those deficiencies before they get to the corresponding classrooms, like freshman English or sophomore, and so on and so forth. And also so that we could, another reason why we do it is so that we can make sure we're not all, everybody has favorite literature, especially English teachers, that they like to teach from. Not that it's bad for you to read things over and over again, but we certainly want to make sure that we are exposing to them to like the most amount of culturally diverse literature than just what we've been used to, just like white British men. We want to make sure that all throughout we're not just doing Edgar Allan Poe, or we're not just reading all these different people who are staples in literature, but that we're incorporating and making sure that we're mindfully including cultural diversity in our readings throughout. It's another reason that's a goal of our vertical planning in ELAR every year, is to make sure all throughout, are they getting adequate exposure? So there's many reasons why you would plan horizontally, and then there's specific reasons why you would plan vertically.
Okay. I got it. So it's kind of like to make sure, like, within grade level, it's the horizontal, and vertical is like within like district level, to make sure that everybody's,
They
like on
align,
check.
right?
Yeah, I got, like, in the sense of like you said right now, like for literature, for them just not to only I'm sorry, expose just one author. It's just, give a little bit of here and there for them to be exposed to different type of literature and different authors and things of that sort, right?
Absolutely. And then
Okay.
maybe the eighth graders are really noticing that the freshman teacher are noticing, man, on that star end of course, they're having difficulty with um let's just say run on sentences. And that means that maybe they don't have a good use, like a particular area. And then so then we know in our eighth grade and our seventh grade instruction that we need to do more exercises for that particular area, because when they get to ninth grade, the teachers have assessed that they get
Uh-huh.
there with issues in that area. So it helps us plan for their needs a little bit better. It helps
Okay.
us reflect on our own teaching and the scope and sequence of the curriculum itself. The district, usually districts like for you to do that. And sometimes they even pay you to do it. They pay you to come in and vertically align the curriculum to make sure, because the curriculum is set, but just to make sure, like based on our particular students, what
Uh-huh.
are their needs? And then we make adjustments as necessary.
Yeah, because now they were mentioning that today, the person in charge, my mentor for the school year,
Yes.
she was telling me about, because I had asked her, because they at first they had said they were going to move me to pre-K 4, right? But then the principal was like that, the person in charge of the after school program, she's in a on third grade, and then she had a lot going on, so she's going to move to pre-K 4. So I'm going to stay on pre-K 3. And I was like, okay. I was like, it is what it is, right? And then
Right.
I had told my mentor about it, and she was like, the what I've noticed about you since, like, you started, it kind of like surprises us because it's your first year. Like, you've done really, really good in the sense of, teaching the kids, exposing a lot. You've met the goals, and you've done, everything from your part. She mentioned about the curriculum. She was like, I don't know if you will be interested, but I can, like, help you to apply, so you can also, like, bring ideas to the curriculum, because they do need it. It's for 3 weeks. It's all day, and it's just
Absolutely.
your research and, input what you have created with them. Because she's been noticing, right? She told me today that I've always done, like, a lot of, like, it's not that I'm hands on, but the aid that I have at the moment, she's very, like, I give her an idea of what I would like for them to do, and then she just, like, creates something. I show her something and she creates, because I'm not very, like, I have good ideas, but it's hard for me to do it, like, with my own hands. So
Right.
but she was like, that's still good because you're being creative, you're going outside the box. And I was like, yeah,
Well,
because it's very.
absolutely. It's all hands on deck in the classroom.
Yes. And then I was telling her, right, and she was like, I've noticed the work that you do with them and everything. And would you be interested on that? And I was like, well, yeah, but are they okay for somebody that is brand new? And she's like, what they want is ideas, because you're gonna let them know, like, with, like, the curriculum and things of that sort. Because, but it, like, she was, just telling me about it, and I was like, well, if you think that I'm ready for it, I can apply, and just, guide me the best you can so I can know what's going on. But now I understand when it comes to the vertical and the horizontal, I can use that as an example in my head to answer those questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's exactly it, And so it sort of helps you understand the first domain, which is in the PPR, excuse me, the
Uh-huh.
one that's weighted the most. It's the one that's weighted the most, and it only covers standard one of your pedagogy document. And
Okay.
and domain 3 is worth the second most, and it also contains standard one in it. So it's so important in, like, possibly 67%, is possible from standard one. We know for sure 34% comes from it, and then 33% comes from standard one, standard three, and the technology application standards. So we know how important standard one is, and what standard one is what we were discussing about:
Yeah.
instruction and assessment. How does a teacher's own assessment in her classroom, not assessment as in one, assessment as in multiple, myriad, like a plethora of assessments, honestly, where you do maybe 5 a day, and they're not the type of assessments that people normally or traditionally think about. Assessment is a gathering of data. Us coming together vertically planning is a sort of gathering of data. It's all these different teachers coming in and saying, this is what I see in my classroom. That's not a multiple choice or an essay question exam or assessment that we're typically used to, but it is a type of gathering of data of student progress. And we use that student progress, just like those conversations during horizontal and vertical planning, in order to design better instruction, to say, okay, these are, like, in horizontal planning, this is the way that I experienced it in real life. I'm on a 7th grade ELA teacher, and
Uh-huh.
we have teams, right? So I have, like, all my students have the same social studies teacher, they have the same science teacher, they have the same math teacher, and everybody goes to music and all ones like the same. But we're a
Uh-huh.
team together, and so we know all our students. We have the same people. Often we would get together not only to help plan cross-curricular activities, but to discuss what needs and trends were we seeing as far as, like, student progress, their progress as a person, right? Like, I'm seeing Javier has not turned in any homework, and he's usually super good. Have you guys noticed that? Oh yeah, I've noticed it too. Actually, he was absent in my classroom. So, like, we start to get together and we circumvent things. So horizontal planning sort of has a different function, but all of it is collecting data to promote student learning, which is student success in the classroom. And that's why standard one is so heavily weighted. That's why it creeps its way into every content test, and why involved in two of the heaviest weighted domains, because it's so important to understand the types of ways that we assess the students, drive and the type of data we gather drive or should drive our design, and not just how on their skill, on their diversity, on their language proficiency. There's all these different things that we think of in order to make the best lesson for them. And I'll go into like a deeper sort of description of what I mean once we look at competency 1 and 2 and 3. Remember, there's 2 documents that go over the same. There's the pedagogy and professional responsibilities, which is a standard test. And then they send that document, which let me show you really quickly. They send the pedagogy document. Oh no, that's not it. They send this document. Sorry, my internet is being terrible.
It's okay. Mine stopped working. That's why I logged in from my phone.
Oh,
So I was like, just to, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to do this. And then I was like, oh, my phone, that's like, come on.
Technology is so fantastic, but when it doesn't work, it's extremely irritating.
Yes, because we're so used to for it to function the way that we need to. And then whenever like right now that I'm like, I have no internet, what am I gonna do? But then I remember I have my phone.
I'm not even a real person anymore. Oh, this is terrible. Okay, so this is the document that they send over to the test maker, and the test takes these 4 standards that we're responsible for, and they made a test out of it. And standard 1 is domain 1, standard 2 domain 2, standard 3 in domain 3 is not by itself. Remember, that's the one that also includes standard 1 again, and the technology application standards. And then standard 4 is domain 4. So the way that you read this document, you have your overarching sort of theme for the standard, and we're going to go into deep detail in it in a bit. And then you have your knowledge on the left hand side, knowledge standards, and you have your application or the skills on the right hand side. So teacher knowledge, what you need to know and before you get into the classroom. And why it's important for you to know it is because you can't read it though. But the standard, let me just make it close out of this and make it bigger. Okay.
Yeah, I can see it. The
Okay,
teacher
good.
instruction appropriate for all students that reflects on understanding of relevant content and is based on continuous and appropriate assessment. So in other words, it's kind of like it's the assessment of the child, right? To know, like you were mentioning the example you gave me right now, in the sense of like, you as a group find out what's going on with the child, that if you see a difference, and like you said, like everybody did see a difference. So it's kind of like, okay, now I see what's going on. Maybe let's find out why
Right.
he's not having good grades, or,
Yeah,
not meeting the goal.
exactly. So it's the teacher designing or creating. Oh, where did my little thing go? Hold on one second. It went away. Designing or creating. So the highest level of I put it away. That's why it went away.
Will be designed like you told me last
Yeah,
time.
so we're doing the highest level, and it really is like literally just such the highest level. If you do it correctly, it takes so much forethought and really should be paid more. So designing, creating, drafting instruction, that's just a plan, just a lesson plan. Then it says it is appropriate. What does that mean? Appropriate for all students. And what that means is several things. And one of them is that it's going to be appropriate intellectually, wherever they are intellectually, socially, physically, emotionally, in the different age groups. So that means EC through 12, whether they're special ed, whether they're 504, GT, socioeconomic disadvantaged, this is ELL, whatever the diversity of student that you have created a plan that is good for all, but that has supports in particular for students that need it, because there are students in every class in particular that needs just a little bit more. Maybe they are a visual learner, or maybe they are tactile learner and it is their learning preference. It behooves us as instructors and educators to try to incorporate learning activities, learning assessments, all of the lessons that cater to the students' learning needs, to the students' learning preferences. So they don't want you just to design a great lesson. Design a lesson for a specific group of kids, and that's what they give you in the PPR. When they tell you the scenario, they don't just say this class. They say, Miss Sauceda's 7th grade English class is half ELL learners of various oral language proficiency. All of that information super important, because we're not just picking the best solution, period. We're picking the best design of instruction and or assessment for the particular students that they tell us about in the scenario. And there are particular ways, particular strategies, particular activities that we do with different demographics, different special populations, in order to ensure their learning and the student success. We call that differentiation. When you differentiate your lesson, you are creating different pathways, different avenues for the student to gain comprehension of the lesson or gain mastery of a particular objective. So for instance, if I am giving my lesson and we are going to, let's say I'm a 7th grade ELAR teacher, and my learning objective is for the students to identify the author's tone in a particular poem by identifying diction words, right? And I'm had that on the board. It's not enough for me to just to go up, choose a poem, and model for them. Oh, well, read the poem out loud and say, well, this word and this word and this word and this word stand out to me, and that's why I chose it, and this is the tone. Okay, here is your poem in the groups. You guys get together and figure out the tone. If I were to do that and then walk around with my cooperative learning groups, I guarantee you I would find that most of my groups do not how to identify diction. There are particular words. It's not just any word in the poem, it's a particular word. So I would have to give them ample examples. We would have to go through practice. I'd possibly show them a video, something with audio, give them a tactile something to glue in, to ignite the different learning styles. And everybody has them. I have them myself. I remember when I once asked in a classroom, I went on my first day, it was in junior, and I said, I spoke to the teacher because she said, we came in, and when we said our names, she told us where we sat, and I got sat in the back, and I like literally have to sit in the front because I need to pay attention. Like, people can talk to me and I don't know what, and I'm kind of a nerd, and I need to sit in the front for my own good. And I literally asked this teacher on the first day of school, Miss, I told her my spiel. I really prefer to sit in the front because I like to be like, I don't like distractions. And I just really, and she said, no, like, I would never, if a student came to me and said, this is my learning preference, you know, to say no. We would never do that. And on the contrary, we're supposed to create avenues and activities that are particular to the students we have, to their interests, to their goals, to their weaknesses, to their strengths, to their learning preferences, to their learning needs, even to their cultural and socioeconomic differences. Utilize those things as strengths and try to circumvent however we can differences. For instance, in classes where I had a lot of, glue in stuff, find examples from whatever, if I knew the class couldn't afford, all the bells and whistles for a project or for something, then I got the bells and whistles or went to the library and I asked for their, recycled magazines. I circumvented an issue where my students that didn't have money would not be able to participate because they don't have a printer at home and they can't just print out their examples. They can just search through some things, or I'll print it out for them, making sure that you have covered all of the bases to make the learning experience the least frustrating for the students. Because many of the students that we do have issues with, like for instance, and I say issues with a grain of salt, in the sense that we need to provide extra support and you can't just do a one all. Hold on, let me let this person in. You can't just do a one fits all lesson. English language learners. For my students, and this happened, and this is 1.16 at the bottom for
Mhm.
English language learners, the appropriate strategies for instructing. There are many appropriate strategies. There's not just one, but one of them, and something that a teacher has to do once they know their particular students, is defining words that your student will have difficulty with, that you know are out of their vocabulary, oral or otherwise, and need direct instruction. So when I was an English teacher many times in my classes, because the bulk of my profession was spent in the Valley. In the Valley, I had many ELL students, and my textbook had, for each reading, maybe like 4 or 5 at most words that were part of their lesson to define and all that jazz. But I knew my kids, and I knew that we needed to do like 7 or 8, possibly 10 direct instruction before we begin, because if not, it's going to impede, interrupt, interfere with comprehension. And so as a teacher, it wasn't part of the plan that came with the teacher's manual or what the curriculum was, but the curriculum writers don't know my particular students. When I get them, I don't even know them. Even if I'm like on the ball teacher in the summer, I used to have people tell me, oh, I wrote all of my lesson plans this summer. Well, then you did it wrong, because you don't even know what you have or who you have or what they'll
It's
like.
true.
You are
You're right.
doing it wrong.
Because it's like me when I started with the pre-K years, I started like a little bit late with the in their school year till September, which at first I was like, oh, it's not that much, but then it's like they were so off, and I had to like redirect them, like if it was like their first day of school, teach them how to like their routine and everything. And I noticed that at first I was like, oh, they're gonna like um do the same, right? That was my mentality. I was like, oh no, they're gonna be on the same level in the sense of like they're barely learning. But then as time went by, I saw that some parents did the extra mile, and they did so much at home that for what they were doing, they were a little bit more advanced in what they needed to do.
Right.
So then I had to be like, oh, okay, so let me change this, that, to make it, like you said, to give them differentiation in the sense of
Absolutely.
each of the child's level of learning. And then I
Absolutely.
created my groups. And then, of course, with time, I would start moving them and be like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I thought you were a little bit high, but you're in the middle. Or
See,
one
and
of
you
my
and
lowest
that
became
moving
a
and that
high
group,
out of the second.
yeah, that moving and grouping at that age level that you had, that's super appropriate in the early child. We know the kids have low attention spans, like they need a lot of structure,
Yes.
they need procedures, and this exam covers early child, like kindergarten through senior. And what we do in a scenario with a group of kindergartners or a group of third graders or a group of seventh or 12th graders differs, because intellectually, we know theoretically, based on science, their brains are different. Little kids, they learn better through hands-on experiences because their brain is not yet at the level where it can think abstractly, where I can just describe to someone and you don't really know what I'm talking about, but you have a little bit and you piece together and you can abstract what I said. That doesn't even begin to solidify into the Middle Ages. And so what we do, and particularly with this exam, for the purposes of you're taking it, when you take the exam, be mindful of the hints that they give you in the scenarios. What age group, what details, are they special ed, are they a part of a special population? We have to do particular things for our ELL and our special ed to make sure that they have the support they need to stay on grade level, to stay engaged on the content, because our ELLs have a bigger sort of task than our English speaking students, because they are concurrently acquiring a second language while also learning all of the content of their different teachers. So math,
Exactly.
science, social studies, all of it, all while simultaneously getting acquiring a second language. Incredibly difficult. And because it's so difficult, and because we know the way that the brain works and the way that someone acquires a different language, making sure that those, if you have ELL students, this is best practice for ELL students is best practice for all students. So I'm just going to talk about ELLs, and you'll just like, whatever you do for ELLs, just do for everyone, because even our native English speakers benefited always and every single time from me defining 4 to 5 extra words in a reading than the textbook identified to help with their comprehension during a reading. It always benefited my traditional, no label, like run of the mill student. It helped them too. So best practice is what we do with ELOs, and we define and show examples and try to connect to prior experience. We try to build as much as possible, especially for new concepts, build background knowledge. And background knowledge also includes teaching them direct instruction of vocabulary. And the best way to teach vocabulary is to define, show a visual, an audio, a video, give synonyms, have the students write, practice it in their own words, and then maybe read their own sentence. Think, pair, share is the best way. And we want our children to not only be practicing the vocabulary that we give them, speaking it, but we need them to practice using all of the academic vocabulary. So one of the best practices for ELLs, which also is a best practice for everyone, is for you to give frequent opportunities for the students to discuss content specific material. So you ask a question of the students, maybe they write it down on a piece of paper, and then they think, pair, share, or refer to a friend, telephone a friend, share that information, that person shares their response, and then they discuss it. And then you come back to a whole group scenario, and that strategy, that sort of piecemealing the content in little activities for speech, gets the kids more willing to respond back to you when you check for understanding in whole group. If they've already said it to a pair or to their partner and sort of use that language, we always want them to be practicing it as much as possible. The social language and also obviously academic specific. So this is all the teacher knowledge, all the theories and stuff. Everything on this side is going to be the correct answer on the exam, on the PPR exam. All of this is what you're doing. So you taking all of this information and then planning lesson plans that reflect an understanding of the student's developmental characteristics and needs. And that's these two here. Implications, right? Implication means like what is implied based on what we know. For one thing that I can tell you of an implication is that in middle school, a lot of times kids go through like self-esteem issues, especially boys who are smaller in stature, who like hit puberty late, the girls that hit puberty early. Middle school is an area where self-esteem, bullying, like not wanting to sort of speak out in a crowd, meaning in a discussion in a classroom, is an issue. So we do things to sort of circumvent that. We incorporate social emotional learning, affective learning to bolster our students' sense of self and ensure that they have a safe learning place. Another implication of a student's developmental characteristics is the fact that you need to have stations. If you have pre-K or kinder, I'm sorry, you cannot have them sit in the same place, the same section, listening to you drone on for even an hour. They're gonna, like, half of them are gonna revolt. And so, but that is an implication of their development. Very short attention spans, like, let's keep moving to the next station. And now we start the timer on anew for the, for them getting bored. Taking that information.
And you're so right.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you're so right, because this pandemic has thrown them off. I don't know how they did it this year, because we didn't have any like stations like for like centers.
Yeah, I threw everybody off 2 years. My daughter, who's in the first grade, and my daughter who's in kinder, like all of their teachers have complained, not against my kids, but to me against other kids, just the deterioration of just being able to be in a social setting and not mess with someone sitting next to you.
You're right. It's like it was so hard. They did for me, like I told the parents when I sent my last remind to them, I was like, I'm beyond proud of them because they did amazing for starting for pre-K 3.
Yeah,
They did
absolutely.
amazing. Like you have no idea. And they were like they were amazed because they wanted like the principal and the assistant principal, they were like, you're like they like to come, and I was like, yeah, they enjoy it. I try to make it as fun as possible for them while also learning, but it's hard because they can't move around like they would like to because like so on and so forth. But it's
Right.
hard for all the little ones. I hope this coming year is better. Like it's much better for them.
I really do. I hope so too. I think it will be, but it's still going to be like I think it's going to be 2 steps forward and 1 step back, for at least 5 years is what I see.
Yes, you're right. This pandemic is still like it's still there.
It lingers like a smelly something. I don't know.
Yes.
So this section is all about students, but under the standard, there are different areas. Like the one beneath it, I believe, is like learning objectives and assessments. So each of these sort of bulleted areas, these bolded areas, gives the overarching thing of things you're responsible for. On this side, again, knowledge, standards, and skill. But so let me give you another example of how this might be utilized on the exam. You have 1.1K, which is different approaches to learning that students may exhibit and what motivates students to become active, engaged learners. And then you have to obviously put it into practice and plan instruction that motivates students that want to learn. And so you have to know that research says, obviously we know there are 2 different types of motivation. You have external motivation, which is me just giving you a sticker or telling you did really well. That's external. In extrinsic, and then you have intrinsic, and that's the type that we always shoot for. It's hard. It comes internally. It comes from the person. So it's not like a light switch or a sticker you could just give to someone. I many times told my kids, okay, guys, everybody, blah, 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 hot Cheetos and cheese. That's extrinsic. The internal motivation, as far as planning concern, being able to ignite it is by you acknowledging your student as a human being with interests and goals and desires in part of your planning. Making it so that there are varied choices for a student. Let's say I'm going to give a research project in the 7th grade. I could just choose a list of people I think are interesting and say everybody has to choose one and that's it. Or I can do a blanket, give everybody their own choice, and then I have to police, like, no, I know who that person is, and you're not going to do a research project on that person. Policing them individually or giving them a list of people they would find interesting because I know them, and I know he likes crocodiles. I'm gonna put the Steve Irwin guy, the crocodile hunter or whatever, on there, like utilizing their own interest. Because if that person chooses, oh, I super like Steve Irwin, the crocodile guy, and they choose him, that's the internal buy-in. They already like that person. So the doing the labor and the learning part of it is going to be so much easier because they have that internal buy-in where that is my interest and my choice already. It works better if you give them a blanket, but then obviously, like I said, you have to police and field ridiculous like suggestions. But finding ways to include them. And I from the day one, and I'm reading this book right now about social emotional learning, and it was talking about restorative justice in the classroom. And I didn't realize that I had been doing restorative justice my entire time I was teaching. I just didn't know that's what I was doing. But I always delayed the start of implementing the curriculum, and I did get reported at least 3 times that served memory. And typically it was like if I'm new to the campus and somebody else is complaining, my kids are having fun still on at the beginning of week 2, and we haven't opened a book yet, but we were doing particular things. I was assessing the oral language proficiency. I was assessing like their writing. We were doing things, relationship building, setting up the boundaries, creating a community of learners, me also learning what they like so I can know how best to engage them in my classroom, and building a sense of a learning community. It doesn't happen overnight. But by the end of at least the first week, they're like, yeah, we're ssauceda's kids, like ssauceda's kids against all the English teachers, we're going to get the best scores. Like we're a team against everybody else, all of my classes together collectively, not one period against the other. But it's so meaningful and rich to them, because during that time, I also establish what the goals the district have for us. First of all, what the state goals are, what the district goals are, and what my goals are as a teacher on this campus, what my goals are for you guys, and what we have to achieve. And then we discuss expectations. What does the classroom have to be like in order for us to achieve all of these things that we know we're going to get done, but what's the right atmosphere, and they'll invariably have discussions about not interrupting people or people walking around, and we'll all together decide on what the climate needs to be in order for us to achieve our goals. That too is you utilizing them. Anytime you validate them and their opinion or their choice, their agency, then they have the buy-in. So in a classroom where you have created expectations for behavior, statistically speaking, research says over and over again, the students are more likely to behave if they were there on the day that we said, we're not going to interrupt people while they're talking, or we're not going to get upset if somebody says something you don't like during their debate or name call, or we're not going to do this or that. They're not going to do those things. They were there, they were part of it. It's like a contract or social agreement that takes place and helps build the learning community. Okay, I'm going to show you the bottom part. So here you have the next part, and it has another area that's highlighted here. Now we have content and pedagogy. And underneath it, we have selection of instructional goals and objectives. Content and pedagogy is mostly you understanding your implementation of the TEKS, the TEKS for your content area. For instance, for the purposes of a math teacher, the math teacher has specific Texas education knowledge and skills that the students must become masters of before they leave their classroom. In addition to that, they must also help all their ELL students acquire a second language. They must do those things. So planning, utilizing your Texas essential knowledge and skills, planning appropriate for student learning, including other disciplines when necessary. And sometimes it's really helpful to utilize other content areas, cross-curricular. I definitely utilize history departments every single time I taught English, because if I went and asked my history teacher, hey, what time period are you guys reading? Then I could pull readings, I could pull poetry, I could pull images for viewing and representing purposes to analyze of that time period. And then during my class period, they will come to me with tidbits of information and facts that they learned in their social studies class. And they'd say, oh, Miss ssauceda, guess what? I know this about this lady, blah, 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 blah. Oh, fantastic. Prior knowledge for my classroom. Then they took what they learned in my class and it was prior knowledge for their history. So if we work together in the way that theoretically it should happen, learning can take place in mass. This next section about instructional goals and objectives speaks to you making sure that your goals and objective, first and foremost, that they're aligned to the TEKS, like the one I gave you as an example. The students will analyze a poem for diction and identify author's tone. That is a instructional goal. It's clear, it's relevant, it's meaningful. Depending on what age group this scenario is for, if I say Miss ssauceda's first grade class objective is to analyze, like it might be above, it's too much for them there, but 7th grade, 6th grade, all that's appropriate for them. Clear, meaningful, appropriate. And more importantly, can it be assessed? Can I measure what I'm saying I'm trying to teach them? The goal that I have for today, can I measure it? And if so, how? I can measure this that I was saying with the example. If I gave each group a different poem to analyze for diction and author's tone from a list, and everyone gets it wrong, and I hear them talking in their groups, that's my assessment right there. I did not meet it. They can't identify or tone. And so I would have to go and regroup, reteach, find out what it was that was lacking or what was the miscommunication, lost in translation, and then try again. But it's very important that your goals can be assessed. Opinions, very difficult to be assessed. So if you say, oh, let's have a debate about this law and your opinion on it, we can't give a grade for an opinion, but you could give a grade for responding to the for completing stipulations on possibly a rubric, so you always want to be able to assess what is there, and you want it to be meaningful. You want it to be information that's pertinent to their growth as a student. Here, develop instructional goals and objectives that reflect different types of student learning and skills. So like I said, their ability to listen. Everybody is responsible, and that means math, science, social studies, trade. I mean, whatever you're on the campus, you are responsible for not just your content, but for increasing the second language acquisition of all of our ELLs and the growth and development of our special populations. The growth. And so we have to do other things. And just, if you have a language goal posted underneath your learning objective, that's better because it helps the students be a little bit more focused on what, like today, we're going to practice our listening skills. That's our, ELPS objective, our English language proficiency standard objective, just listening skills. So we're going to play telephone and see how well we listen to each other. And that's the objective. And based on, so being able to assess, very, very important. You have resources, and this includes you making sure that you have everything that they need. Like I said, for students that are like low socioeconomic, making sure you have everything that they need there. So nobody goes without, like, there's not a beat that step where it's like, oh, Stephanie doesn't have a pencil. No, everybody has a pencil. Everybody has a book. Everybody has an iPad for the assignment stated in the scenario. And that you look for ways to connect learning to outside of the school. It's very important. Research says that all learners learn best if they can connect to their learning to their real lives. Like, this resonates, and this is why this is important, because it connects in this way. And the more that we make connections between businesses, community members, museums, things around us, the more their learning experience is enhanced, because they see learning outside of the vacuum, that learning and the stuff that we learn about is important in other areas of life where adults work with it. So that's resources section. Designing coherent instruction is you always sticking to the TEKS. The TEKS should be your template for setting your instructional goals. They're always used for setting your instructional goals. Implementing instructional resources. Now that can be things like a Spanish English dictionary. It can be things like for your dyslexic students, it can be hands-on things. It can be a cool down area, just things to enhance the students' learning experience and their achievement in the class. Instructional groupings, carefully crafting any grouping that you do so that it's diverse, because same groups are stagnant and no new ideas can come from it. So if I had a group of friends that are just like me, their parents are like me, they have, a little group of siblings, they all have the same experiences, and we get into a group and we talk about it, we're probably going to have very similar comments about it. In addition to the lack of like conversation, when you limit the diversity of groups, you also limit the proficiency of language. So the reason why we pay such careful attention to crafting of cooperative learning groups is so that you have a mix of students. Like, let's say you have an intermediate student, then you're going to want to have a native English speaker, an advanced high. You're not going to want to put intermediate students with other beginners or other advanced highs. You're going to want to have some model English speakers in the group. Low socioeconomic mixed group. So you would never say, okay, guys, we're going to do a group. Everyone get in groups of 4. I mean, that's what they used to say when I was in school. And right away, I'd go to my friends that I knew would put in their weight in the work. And that's who I was going to be in a group with. But that's not fair and that diminishes the learning experience. So careful grouping so that they see a diversity of perspective and there's a more meaningful conversation or dialogue within there, and that there is a blended share of language proficiency so that our students lower on the end of proficiency can pick up from the model English speakers. Reflection and closure, very important. I know that this is something that as a teacher, I was bad at. And I was bad at it because we would get so into the mix that would be the end and be like, oh my God, we're out of time, guys. Everybody pack up your stuff, clean up after yourselves. I will see you tomorrow. It was like we ran out of time, 45-minute groups, we're talking, we're in group. And it really does help to have closure. Like, okay, guys, what do we do? What do we learn? What are the issues at the end of it? And I know that it doesn't always, time and the real life doesn't always allow for that. But for the purposes of the PPR, this is a theoretical exam, which is why everybody tells you don't go off based off of real life. Because in theory, you should be able to have an engagement of reflection and closure at the end and not run out of time because y'all are in the mix. So just appropriately planning for that every day and staying, I would plan for it. I just wouldn't stick to it and we would run out of time. So, but making sure that you do, because reflection and students thinking about what they've learned and more importantly, thinking about their thinking, which is metacognition, is a very important skill for them to practice K through 12. For them to think and reflect about their thinking. I'll give you an example of how we use metacognition. You might have used it yourself. Have you ever read a paragraph in a novel or an article and then thought to yourself, man, I don't know what I just read? Well, if you have, that is metacognition. Your mind did not comprehend what you read. It said to itself, I didn't understand that. I didn't get any of that. Let me reread it. That's metacognition. And it's a skill that we want all students to have by the time they leave us in the 12th grade, but certainly want for them to start honing early on. So getting them to reflect, getting them to think about different passages, think about their thinking, summarize, their readings, all of that, reflecting back on their thinking process, on their comprehension, is an excellent exercise in metacognition and reflection. And we want to make sure that we're doing that every day. And the easiest way to include it is at the end of the day. It's just straight at the end of class reflection. But there are several strategies that you can do to incorporate that. Could you hear me?
Yeah, I heard you. I just wanted to, because my little button wasn't working for the volume, but I wanted to share something with you that I would do with them. That now that you're doing that, letting us know about this information, I would do with them, like whenever I would do read out louds, I would always let them know, hey, okay, the author does this, right? And then so on and so forth. It's a repetition until they understood. The author writes the story and illustrator draws the pictures, right?
Right.
But when I was reading, let's say it will be like the Little Red Riding Hood, or the caterpillar who ate, and so on and so forth. A small book, right?
Right.
I would stop, and at first they were like, "Why are you stopping? Like, keep on going." And I was like, "No, well done." And then I would ask them a question, right, like with correlation of what I just read, and they would answer that. Like at first they were a little bit confused, right? But then I was like, "Okay, it did this. Remember when it went here?" And so on and so forth. And then as they went by, I would stop and ask them a question, and they will answer it like nothing. And I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like they're like, I'm like, because I was assessing them in the sense like they're understanding what I'm reading.
Right.
And it's like so true. Like when you're saying this, now it clicks to me. But I was like, when I was on the test, I was like, oh, it didn't. I'm so mad at myself.
Oh, you'll get it next time. This next time's the last time, I promise.
Yes, I hope so too, because it's 100 questions. It's so long.
I know it. I know it. And they're tricky. They try to be tricky on purpose. And now we get to the second big part. Remember, I told you we can't plan for anybody that we haven't assessed. I don't know what you need if I haven't like done some sort of assessment, talking to you, you gave something. Yes, assessing their assessing them constantly. And I mean just like frequent. And most of the time people think excuse me, 1 or 2 quizzes a week just for the grade book. That's enough. That's what we need. That's not the kind of data that's going to promote student learning. That might promote them to the next grade in their grade book. But the type of data that promotes student data is that day-to-day assessments, the formative, which help form or help us form our design, us create our design, those formative assessments, which can be informal and formal. And most of the time they're informal. You know, me walking around my classroom, listening to their groups, I can assess whether or not they got particular objectives that I was going over, or it could be an exit ticket, or it could be something that they use technology wise to turn in, or it could be a conversation I had with them. So many ways for us to assess them. And so
You're
this
totally right.
assessment part, yeah, this assessment part is also making sure that you're assessing them at all times, that you are communicating with them always and letting them know what the standards are. Like, this is what I'm looking for, guys. And the standard is the objective. Okay, guys, everybody should be able to analyze their poem for diction and identify the author's tone, identify the same tone I got from the diction words that you choose. That's the criteria. And once y'all do that, that's the criteria for master. So making sure you're communicating that. If it's this complicated rubric, then you go over the complicated rubric and you show them what mastery looks like and what, not mastery looks like.
Yes.
Designing assessments that are helpful for the students as far as their strengths and needs. For instance, I'll give you an example. I was an ELAR teacher, and many times when I was checking the reading comprehension of a student and not the writing skills, I would say, let's have a conversation. Who do you think the narrator, like what perspective was the narrator? Okay. So, and what do you think the main conflict was? Okay. Like man versus man, or have a conversation, have them tell me something. If I know a student is better at giving me a certain thing, like let's say they want to, instead of writing me an essay, turning in a multimedia presentation over all the stuff, they're still giving me the information. It's just in a different format. So being flexible with your assessments and making sure that you aren't just like cutting them at the knees, that you're allowing them to be successful in whatever way they can be successful. Obviously, if I were assessing their writing skills, I can't just say it to me. You have to write something, and there's going to be a rubric and there's going to be particular things. But if I'm checking for reading comprehension, or I'm checking for other things, there are other ways to allow the students agency, again, being an agent of action in their learning, to choose, like, this is the way I would like to shine for you. This is the way I would like to show my mastery. So, another really important one, last one before we go, using the students' self-monitoring. Again, getting them practicing that reflection, practicing that conscious reflection or thinking about their own thinking or their progress for goals that they've made, or the activity or the project, whatever it is. Okay, guys, you're in your groups doing your poem. Like, I want for you to describe to me what the most difficult part about this activity was, and have them write for you in 2 sentences what the most difficult part for you was, and what might have helped you in the thing. And they're just thinking about what they thought about, what they did, and how possibly, and we need them to do that. So getting them to analyze, self-monitor, tell them, okay, you have 2 weeks left for the project. So I'm going to do a progress check tomorrow. And then after that, you're on your own, having them self-monitor. This is the due date. Check in your thing. Where are you at? Are you going to be ready by then? Getting them to be active, like, putting the onus on them. They're getting them to practice to be responsible for their own learning, responsible for their own practice and their own understanding, but that is not something that just happens. People are not just born with that. And if no instruction or practice in that skill takes place, you will not do that on your own. I know people who don't think about what they're thinking at all, or what they understood at all, grown adults.
Exactly. You're totally right. It happens to me sometimes, like I've said, like me, with whenever, like, the sessions that I've done with you, trust me, I don't know, but you explain so well and you make it so fun. Like,
oh, I'm
right
so
now,
glad.
like right now that you were talking about everything, and then I was thinking to myself, okay, when I answered that question, why didn't I think about that? And then, like, it kind of, like, it opens our brain, and it's like, I'm an adult, and it's like imagine a child like Birdie starting like brand new at school, or maybe they have time, but it's like, because it depends on the teacher. Like I've said, some teachers do go at the extra mile,
Yeah.
and do accommodate to like to make sure that they at the learning level of each child and take the time to do so many things for them. But there's others, it's like they say it is what it is, and it's like if they meet or not, that's their choice. And it's
Right.
like they go to another grade level and they're like they're still lost. So it's like I
Exactly.
totally understand that. So now it's a good thing to elaborate, to explain, to check that they're doing, that they're learning.
Yeah, that
Like,
they're learning and that they're checking on their own learning just to get in practice. Check on your own learning. Where are you at? I mean, they're
yeah,
getting better at it and better at it because I know that my kindergartner and my first grader are more in tune where they are reading level wise than my older kids, my older group of kids who are
yes,
19 and 17, whatever. They weren't in on the deal. And there's nothing wrong with getting kids in on the deal. It's their own learning, telling them this is the goal, guys. This is where we're at right now. What we're shooting for
yes,
is this. And then letting them know, hey, you're here, and now you're here, and now you're here.
yes.
Not
And
only
then
is
another
it
thing is also that I've also you have a lot of experience in teaching. That I don't know if you noticed. It's like it depends on the subject that they like. Sometimes there's subjects that it's like we can throw it at them and like in many different ways, and they're like, "What are
it's
you talking
like
about?"
pulling teeth. I know it's
And
so
then there's
and
others that they're like, "Oh my goodness!" Like I have some kids like science. Like for us, science and social studies was more of a like an introduction. Wasn't really like like oh, you have to make sure they meet a goal. It's just introduce, try to do this. But I would try to do little experiments with them and so on and so forth. And I noticed that some of them that they were lacking on their like let's say on their reading and their math, but they were blooming in like social studies and in science.
right.
And I was like, wow, that's
And
awesome.
imagine, and you should take to your principal and say, listen, I'm just thinking the kids really like science and social studies. What if we taught them the standards that they need to learn in English using science and social studies stuff that they're already interested in? Obviously, they're
Yes.
interested in it. And that would be because you can teach particular skills in any way. And with any content or whatever. But
Uh-huh.
so like you can teach analysis skills. You can even teach diction and tone using science and social studies pieces. So just trying to find ways to take the students' strengths and bridge that so that their weaknesses, get less and less.
Yes, you're totally right. And what I would do, like, because they like for let's say for social studies, the this past weeks, right? They introduced like farm animals, zoo animals, and circus animals, right? Of course, I was like, I'm a kind of against the whole zoo and the whole circus because I was like, they're in cage.
Yeah,
I don't
me
like
too.
that.
I'm like, no,
So I'm
they're
like,
flat
but what I
animals.
did was kind of like, I would show them like something, like a little clip of something that I know that was like friendly to their level. And then I would find like let's say the tiger, and then it's like whatever letter of the week, if it was a T or like or Z for zebra, whatever the case might be, and kind of like connect it, and we would spell out the word tiger and remember, and then we will sound out the letter, each letter, and then blend it in. For 3-year-olds it's a lot, but it's like
It is,
within
and
like
it's good. Yeah. And it is possible. You just have to find, like I
yes,
said, differentiation is different
exactly,
pathways towards success. It's just, did you find the pathway for them to jump on,
yes. And I would kind of connect like a little bit of everything that they had to do within every subject, and they liked it. They were like, oh. And then like remember the T, 10, right? 10 starts with the t, t, 10
Uh,
E, and then it's like okay. And then some of them, of course, my low ones, they were like, as long as they knew that it was a T, I was more than happy for
Absolutely.
them. But then I had
That's
like my high
something.
ones that
Yeah.
they were like, oh, so that's how you read tiger, and that's how you read the word 10. I was like, yes, and kind of give them an explanation because it's hard for them to understand this is a number and this is a letter. Like
Right.
because it's a lot for them. But then like as time progressed, I noticed like their growth, that they were doing so good that I was like, um, of course, some of them have like a lot of like not speech, but because they're like so babied, and some of them were like the babies or the only child, so they're very babied by mom and dad. So it's kind like they have that little baby voice, and we're like, hey, we have to use our words, we have to have a voice, right? Because I want to hear how you feel. I want to know, and if we kind of like stutter and like mumble, I don't understand. So it's like little by little they were growing, and then parents would tell me, like message me, like she has such a big voice now, and I was like, that's good. I'm
You
proud
see,
of
and
them.
that's the thing. We're not just academics and special ed teachers. I have to give it to special ed because
Yes,
they're
me
responsible
too.
not just for the academics, but for really preparing the students for like later on, giving them the skills, the like self-esteem skills, like being able to vocalize their needs. There's so much that goes into the development of a student, a special ed student, apart from regular ed. But we do a lot, which is why I'm always arguing with people on Facebook defending teachers, because people don't know everything that a teacher has to think of and deal with in order to do a good job. And I'm not saying everybody does, but I know a lot of people doing a good job, doing their best job
Yes.
with non-theoretical real life like constraints. You know what I'm saying? And so um I'm very proud of your work and all of the studying that
Thank
you've
you.
done. I know you're going to be successful this next time around, and I'm really glad,
Yes.
that you're going to be in the classroom, because we need good teachers now more than ever on the planet. Do we need more teachers, good teachers?
Yes, because it's so hard. And then with everything going on, it's like, you have to like my kiddos, I was like, okay, because they were asking some of them, right? My smart ones,
Mhm.
they were like, but why this happened? It's like there's people that have a mean heart. Let's try not to be like that. Let's have a kind heart. And
Right.
kind of embedding them like, be nice, be kind, use kind words, don't be mean. Because, and then I was showing like little clips of emotions and so on and so forth for them to understand, because of course it's very understandable when they're the only child or the babies that they get catered to. And
Yeah.
it's like whatever they say goes. And it's like, yes, I understand your parents love you and everything, but that's not the way it is. Because if we don't show them a compassionate heart, what's going to happen later on when they grow up? They're going to feel entitled for everything. And like, life can be difficult at times, or life can be great. It all depends, because everybody's different. And it's like, little things like that. And then a mom in particular, I would talk to her and I would let her know, because that little girl was very like down to earth. Like she would tell me some things that I would like, okay, I need for your mom to teach me to be maybe a better person than what I am. I don't know. But the
Yeah.
times that I spoke to the mom, she was like, she was a baby of 5. And she's like, I always tell them, Miss Zapata, like they need to do this, and this, and they have to understand when I'm able to give them something like a little gift, or, a little
Yeah.
extra, because they deserve it. They have to work hard for it. They have to be nice, no discrimination, and so on and so forth. Because at the time I had a child with, he's on the autism spectrum, but they haven't really finished everything until hopefully this coming year he's going to go to the sped unit where he belongs, for the better of him and anything, like, more than anything. And then at the time he was hitting, because he just started, and the principal was like, no, like you need redirect. And I was like, how am I going to redirect a child that I call him by his name and he's looking somewhere else? And I try to show him affection, be like, oh my love, or like, and he
Yeah.
doesn't respond, because I don't know what's going on at home. And situations where he would hit, and I would call parents and let them know, hey, it's not on purpose, it's what's going on. That mom blew me away. She was like, don't worry, I understand, my daughter told me what's going on. And she did tell me, she's like, he looks like he's a little bit sick, mom. And the mom was like, you better be nice to him, you better be helpful, do not be crying or whining for something. And I was like, wow. I was like, but then
Yeah,
again, there's
absolutely.
those are the type of parents where you're like, can we have more of those too?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And that's just taught at home. And so as unfortunate as it might be, I think one of the answers to making things better in like the universe, or at the very least in our country, is including more
Yes.
social emotional awareness and social emotional learning. And that's what you were doing about the emotions. Like, so there's 5 pillars, and one of them is you understanding what emotions are, and then like the range of emotions, what a
Yeah.
normal reaction to emotions are, because not all the students have examples of normal reactions to jealousy, or to someone taking a toy, or to
Yeah.
whatever.
Or sharing, or like,
Exactly. Yeah. Or being in a jealous relationship in junior high, and they think, oh, this is the way I have to be. I have to be blah, 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 blah. And then that's the way they are. So getting them early to talk about like feelings. And one of the other pillars is social awareness, you understanding that your feelings are not all that matters in the universe, that there are other people who also have feelings that may be hurt, or they may be having a bad day. And I always try to explain to my kids, like, whenever something happens with a student, they're like, oh, he got his card moved 3 times, and I'm like, well, mama, we don't know what's going on at his house. He might be acting out because he feels alone or whatever. I'm like, try to be nice to
yeah.
him. But like, you have to know that and teach that in order for the kids to do that, and then they just do that as an adult. And so there are curriculums that other districts in Texas have that are concurrent with their academic curriculum. So most of the districts I've worked, actually all of the districts I've worked for, have only had academic curriculums. That means that they have set out curriculums for math, science, and whatever other content area, but they don't have something in particular to the growth of the person's like mental health, like social emotional awareness. And it's invaluable. Like the studies are ridiculous. Research has already said, like, for a very, very long time, it's actually one of your standards. It's in here. It's in here. It's just like as an aside, like, and also you have to be fostering social emotional awareness, but no districts are required to do it. And it's just one little standard.
And you're right, like, because they kind of like embed in social studies certain things, but then again, like, because for us, like, we're not on the TEXES, because TEXES is just it's, we have a curriculum, but it's just, how can I say, like a guideline, right, to go by. Okay, but then my mentor was kind of like, because she's doing pre-K4, she's done the upper grade level, she's been done it for years, right? She told me, let's do this. What if we imply like either feelings, because they do have some themes with Frog Street, or I always get confused with that, but it doesn't really connect with the curriculum per se. So that's where she said, let's do, because we were working together. I was like, let's embed this, like their emotions, their feelings, the sharing, the understanding that they have to, be respectful and so on and so forth, like at the beginning of the school year. But then again, like towards the end, even though like it wasn't for them to do, I would still remind them and be like, okay, guys, remember. And I will ask them every morning, how are you guys feeling? Or what did you guys do on the weekend? And of course, some of them did. I would say, I did this fun. And then I had others that were like, they kind of copied that, what they were saying. And I would notice, and I would let them know, hey, it's okay. Miss Zapata didn't do anything. She just stayed home and watched TV, and that's still cool. I relaxed. And it's okay not to go to Peter Piper every weekend, or it's okay not to go to the park, because, for them not to, like, my thing was that I was told, my mentor, I want for them to understand that it's okay. We don't have to have the lives, or, that another child
or
says
what's on Instagram, which is important for the middle school and high school kids. Like,
or
and they literally feel less than, like, what?
Yes. Or sometimes parents, it's only one parent, or like, making everything, working two jobs to afford to take care of them, and so on and so forth. And they have to understand and be appreciative of what they have. And it's okay if they don't have, like, an example of a like, for mine, right, like a toy that another one has, or something like that. It's okay. And it's like, and it's okay not to be going out every day, like, like the other ones would say, because I had one in particular, and like, mom, hopefully, bless her heart, and everything goes well for her, but she was struggling. And I was like, and I know my little one, she would copy. She would, one time, my co-teacher, she was like, oh, we were watching something about Paris that I just introduced to them. I was like, look, guys, this is so pretty, right? So we were there, like, because we had some extra time when we started another activity. And my co-teacher, she was like, oh, I went there. I was like, that's so nice. You love to travel. I'm so boring. And I was just like laughing, right? And then my little one said, I went there too. And I was like, my love, what we were talking about that last time. And then she looked at me like she knew, I knew that she was lying. And I was like, my love, I've never been there. Miss Hernandez has, and it's okay, because she's adventurous. I'm not adventurous. Or maybe, like, I didn't have the money to go, and it's okay, like, to kind of go to their level for understanding. And she would look at me and she's like, okay, I haven't gone. And it's okay, my love. Nobody else has gone.
I know, everybody else is jealous.
Exactly. It's like, wow, that's really nice. But it's little things like that. And it's kind of like, I try, like, of course I don't do it every day, but I try to do it as, as I can, for them to understand it's okay to not have, because I think that's one of the things right now, especially like when you mentioned Instagram or any social platform, they make it seem so perfect that everybody's like, I want that.
Oh, I
like
know.
their life is perfect.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's not. God knows what they're going through.
Yeah,
to be
what is
there.
going on? I know. It's just
Yeah,
never what it seems. And it's hard for the kids not to believe into that. You know what I mean? I even believe in it. I see people and I'm like, oh my God, I love their life. How wonderful.
Oh yes, like,
especially
the traveling and the, like,
yeah,
the
absolutely. I'm like, oh my God.
I'm like, oh my goodness, me too. I'm like, can I go there? But then I think to myself, I'm so boring. I don't think I'll go.
I know I won't go. That's funny. Well, I'll let you go for this evening, but I'm gonna send you a link to the video so you can watch it again to go over this stuff.
Yes.
Do a deep dive of standard one, and in that in the manual domain one, if you want to
Domain
look
one?
at the competencies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
And
I'm looking also at your YouTube videos.
yes, absolutely. And so there's other YouTube videos there that talked about things we didn't talk about yet, like wait time and communication styles and other
Uh-huh.
things. So absolutely, for sure, take a look at those, and you let me know if you have any questions and if you need
Okay.
any more help.
Yes. Okay, Miss Alceda. I don't know. Are you gonna do one tomorrow? Because it's up. I'll log in. Just let me know the days that you're available for.
I believe I
for-
am doing one tomorrow. So if you want to log in tomorrow, we'll go into standard 3 a little bit deeper.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
that's
Sounds
another
great.
big chunk. Because standard 1 is you designing instruction and assessment, and
Uh-huh.
standard 3 is your implementation. How are you
Yes.
implementing it in the classroom? What things did you
Oh,
put in place? What activities? What questions did you think of before? What technologies are you going to use? How did you differentiate? All of those things.
okay. Awesome.
And
Sounds
we'll
great.
go over those tomorrow.
Thank you so much for everything. Have a good evening.
Absolutely. You have
See
a
you
beautiful rest
tomorrow.
of your evening. Yes. Bye bye.
Likewise. Bye bye.